Hello everybody, Jeff Siegel here, and today I want to talk to you about a Time magazine article that I read that says, "Therapy isn't fixing America's mental health crisis." And so I read this headline and I'm thinking to myself, of course, it isn't fixing America's mental health crisis, because America's mental health issues is not a result of a lack of therapy. And now, before I say anything else, right, by no means do I want this to be bashing or poo-pooing on therapy. I think therapy is wonderful. And I don't think anybody deserves to be living imprisoned by their own mind. All right? And what I'm referring to, right, is not severe personality disorders, but just general malaise, sadness, anxiety, worrisome thoughts, right? The things that are just reducing our quality of life because our minds are kind of getting the best of us. Right? This, right, is a normal reaction to living in an abnormal world. And I just want to repeat that message, right? What you're experiencing, if it's sadness or anxiety or some mild form of depression, right, in many ways can be a completely normal reaction of your body and your mind to living in an abnormal, and I'll say unhealthy world. And specifically, I want to point to three factors that I believe are the root causes of why so many people maybe are experiencing issues when it comes to their mental health. Right? And it has nothing to do with a lack of therapy. Again, therapy is wonderful, and I think everyone should deserve to have access to a therapist with whom they can talk and share and digest what's going on, all right, for themselves. But, right, talking and therapy is not going to solve the issue, because the moment you're done, you go right back into the environment, the circumstances, the conditions, right, that are conducive, right, to anxiety, to worry, right? And number one is nutrition. Right? The foods that we are putting into our bodies generally are not very supportive of our brain, and not very supportive of our microbiomes, and are not very supportive of our digestive system, and all of these things impact our mood. Right? Take, for instance, ultra-processed food, which comprises upwards of 60% of the standard American diet. Right? Things that come in wrappers and packages that have been kind of torn down and reconstituted tend to lack fiber, tend to be filled with artificial processed ingredients, emulsifiers, all right, colorants, other things, right, that we know impact your microbiome. And guess what? When your microbiome is off, right, all sorts of downstream things happen. That is going to influence the production of neurotransmitters. Guess where most of the serotonin in your body lives? Down here, right? So if your microbiome is off, guess what? Your serotonin, your neurotransmitter is going to be off. If the lining of your gut is impaired and there are things getting through into your blood causing inflammation, right, that is also then going to impact your nervous system, right? Take, for instance, there are millions of Americans that have a genetic predisposition, the MTHFR gene polymorphism to be specific, right, that says that they can't actually metabolize folic acid. Now, guess what? Almost all the grains in the United States, everything you buy with enriched flour and grains, right, has folic acid added into it. You can be consuming as much of that as you want, but if your body can't convert it into the appropriate form that it can use, then guess what? It's not doing anything. So things like folic acid deficiency, right, can be contributing to poor mental health. All right, let alone now you're consuming all this extra folic acid, all right, that's just sitting unmetabolized in your body. We don't even really know what that does. Right? Take for something else like people who are millions on antacids, right, proton pump inhibitors, right? And again, I'm not saying go out and stop taking your proton pump inhibitors, but I'm just saying, right, you could be consuming all of the protein in the world, right? But if you don't have enough stomach acid to break down and then assimilate that protein, you might be deficient in specific amino acids. And guess what? Not getting enough tryptophan in your diet. What does tryptophan turn into, right? It turns into serotonin, turns into melatonin. What are you taking all these amino acids? You're building them into dopamine and other neurotransmitters. So the food that's coming into your body, even if you think it is the right thing, all right, there's possibility that your body is not metabolizing and breaking it down in the way that can utilize it. So what are you going to end up? You're going to end up with nutrient deficiencies. You're going to end up with neurotransmitter imbalances. Right? And this is not to say all of the other things that perhaps you're putting into your body that are actively, right, stealing things away from what we know is going to help regulate, right, your body and regulate your cells to produce energy, right, that are going to be efficient. And so things like lots of excess glutamate, glutamic acid, right? This comes from the ultra processing of proteins. We break them down, right? And now we've got a lot of glutamate floating around, a lot of glutamate coming into our body. All right, and this isn't even about MSG, but with lots of glutamate, guess what, right? This is a excitatory molecule, right? We're talking about all sorts of things coming into your nervous system. Guess what? All of those anxious thoughts, all of that overthinking, when you feel like your mind is racing, well, if you have this excitatory neuromodulator, right, that you're consuming in your diet in excess, it kind of makes sense that your mind is going to be running 1,000,000 miles an hour. Because guess what? You have all this glutamate floating around your synaptic clefts, right? There's lots of activity that's happening, and maybe you don't have the enzymes, or maybe your body doesn't have what it needs to process this to remove it out, right? So, boom, lots of activity, not a lot of down regulation, right? So things get out of balance, and so much of this comes back to, right, the foods that we put into our bodies, the ways in which they're processed, the ways in which they're nutrient depleted. And again, even if you are trying to pay attention and eat the right things with the right vitamins and the right micronutrients, unless you pay attention to your unique biology, right, and do some testing, you might not be able to convert these things. And so, again, poor mental health, right, has so much to do with the food that we're eating, right? Not at all has anything to do with a lack of therapy. Number two, right, is technology. The ways in which our technology is dysregulating our nervous systems. And I think we've all experienced this, right? Because our bodies and our nervous systems evolved in a much different environment that was slower. It was linear. It was lunar, in the sense that change happened over the course of days, of weeks, of months. There were cycles, all right, of nature that we grow accustomed to, right? But none of these things happen instantaneously in our pocket multiple times a day, or on the screen, bing, 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 emails, news, things that are activating threat responses. Right? So much of the world is in peril right now. There are so many intractable global issues, and there's so much heartbreak and terrible things going on, and all of that is getting beamed to us every moment of the day. And so it makes sense that our nervous systems are going to be hypervigilant. They're going to be on high alert. And what does this do? Again, when we look at it biochemically, right? Releasing adrenaline, releasing cortisol, activating fight or flight responses in our body. Sometimes we shift into this hypersympathetic state where we're kind of just round up, all right, running on this fight or flight energy all day. Sometimes we might move into this collapse where we're just kind of frozen, right? We're apathetic. Maybe we're just dissociated because it's the only way we can handle all of this. We say, I can't deal with it. It's overwhelming. So we numb ourselves out, right? Again, what's going on in our mind, our perception of reality, the thoughts that are coming in are directly impacted by the ways in which technology is shifting our underlying neurobiology towards this chronic state of stress, of trauma, of fight or flight, dysregulating our ability to actually be in a more calm and balanced place. So technology is another direct impact. And again, therapy, wonderful. But the moment you finish your session, you go back right into screen time, emails, messages, constant news, all right, blasting all sorts of tragic events. Guess what? It makes sense that your mind is going to be filled with unpleasant thoughts, with things that maybe seem overwhelming, too much. Right? And again, this is a normal response to living in a world where our nervous systems are being constantly, all right, pushed into a place of extreme dysregulation. And then the third thing I want to just highlight is social isolation, the ways in which we are cut off from each other, the ways in which we've lost a good sense of community because our daily lives push us into working maybe remotely, into the ways in which we interact with people, which is very superficial, perfunctory. We don't have this rich fabric or social networks. You know, I know for myself, I work from home so many days, I don't see other people except on Zoom, other than my family and a few other people maybe around the neighborhood, right? And even that can seem like a lot, all right? When we lack these interactions with others, we lose co-regulation. Right? When you're in a room with a bunch of people that you know, like, and trust, your nervous system, all right, is being regulated by their nervous system and vice versa. And there's this beautiful resonance that happens. And if you look to the field of interpersonal neurobiology, you can kind of get deep into the ways in which our social interactions really help make sure that our biology is within this window of tolerance where we're not overactivated and freaking out, but we're also not underactivated, frozen, numb, all right, and unable to really participate in life. But we're in this nice place, right, where we can feel things, process things as they come, enjoy each other's presence. All right? But when our nervous systems don't get that during the day, and then when we add in this technological piece that's pushing them to extremes, and then we add in this nutritional piece where we don't even have the building blocks in our body to perhaps produce some of the chemicals, hormones, and neurotransmitters necessary to keep our nervous systems regulated and then to keep our brains functioning optimally, it makes complete sense why our mental health is in crisis. And so when I read something like therapy isn't working, I'm thinking to myself, therapy might be working wonderfully. And yes, we need more therapists and more people that are willing to open up. All right. Again, I think having time in your day is a privilege, and it should just actually be something that is fundamental to all of us to have this opportunity. Therapy is one form of co-regulation. But when we lose these other things because of the social, technological, and nutritional fabric of our lives, all right, then it's gonna be hard to live in a happy mindset. And again, the goal isn't necessarily to be joyfully, ecstatically happy all of the time, but to be in a place, all right, where your mind can be supported, flexible, agile, to bounce between the hard stuff and the good stuff, to have an outlook on life that's just as optimistic as it is realistic, to be able to take in the joys, but also recognize the sorrows. This is a healthy, flexible mind, and it is very difficult to do, all right, when these other conditions in our lives are ever present. So I just want to point that out and try to get, again, beyond this lack of therapy being cause of mental health issues, which I think is kind of nuts, to examine some of the deeper underlying issues, the root causes, looking at it from this integral lens. And there are many more. I just wanted to highlight these three for you today. So until next time, Jeff Siegel here. Take care of yourself. Take care of your body. Take care of your mind, for they are one and the same, intertwined. Thank you.